The funds in question are capitation grants that are released every financial year to cater to the running of schools under the Universal Primary Education and Universal Secondary Education programs. A July 22nd circular from the Ministry of Finance Permanent Secretary Keith Muhakanizi recalled this disbursement, pointing out that the funds are not needed since the schools are not in session. However, Edward Kanonya, the head teacher of Kololo SS, has opposed this move.
Most schools have touched this money, have spent this money, and on genuine grounds as per their approved budgets. For the PS to imagine that we can have this money returned intact, it's a very unrealistic demand.
Philbert Baguma, the Secretary General of the Uganda National Teachers Union, points out that it's wrong on the ministry's part to assume that schools stopped operating when they were closed back in March this year.
Any education institution has never closed. The head teacher must be there.
And in the absence of learners, head teachers turn to renovations as well as restocking on supplies that are needed to keep the institutions running.
For example, if I had budgeted to buy more computers, if I had budgeted to repair the school plant, if I had budgeted to buy a school resource machine, what the students are there or not, why should I go ahead to buy the same?
In the spirit of maintaining education institutions and keeping them in good shape, hoping for the reopening of institutions in the future, it is not practical that money should be brought intact.
They further point out that the money may have been used to cater for the salaries of non-teaching staff.
Interestingly, government does not pay for our security personnel. There are also quite a number of other staff in the schools which government does not pay. So these have to be catered for by the schools using part of that money.
Due to COVID-19, some schools have also used the funds to adapt the institutions to the required standard operating procedures introduced to combat COVID-19. Kanonya warns of the dire consequences that might befall the education institutions if they are forced to return the money.
Because that will mean that the schools will get abandoned, even by the security people. And that's when we find that school computers have been stolen, the school vehicles, they have lost their tires, because there's no security.
In this scenario, the only option is to allow head teachers who have already spent the money to account for it.
Account for the funds which you spent on operations and maintenance areas. So if you have paid for what was supplied to the school, the only issue would be now accountability, to account for the funds that were sent to schools.
The Ministry of Finance spokesperson Jim Mugunga has responded to this issue.
It's an accountability issue. This is about those whose mandate is to account for resources to do so.
Mugunga has also revealed that head teachers who spent the money will be allowed to account for it.
One way of accounting is not actually to refund money, but one way of accounting is to say, yes, I received this money. By the time you asked us to refund, I had done A, B, C, D, and here's the paperwork.
In his last address, President Yoweri Museveni revealed that a final decision on the opening of schools will be made before September, while the Ministry of Health was also tasked to come up with SOPs that can enable learning institutions to resume teaching. Joyce Nakato, NTV Weekend Edition.